And by occupation, do you mean my day job or how I make money? Okay, how I make money.
Welcome to Artists in Offices, a podcast that explores, through interviews with working artists, the idea that the work you do for pay supports the work you do for love. Or does it? I'm your host, Rebecca Bird Grigsby, visual artist, crafty generalist, and dance enthusiast. Having quit my full-time day job in 2017, I'm currently a recovering artist in offices, rebooting my studio practice while trying to figure out my next career move. Each episode of this podcast explores the perspective of an individual artist juggling their creative practice with their day job. In episode 2, I speak with Laura Torres, a Chicago-based multimedia artist and tightwire performer.
I'm Laura Torres. I am 38 years old, and my day job is nonprofit fundraising. I'm more a back-end data person.
I'm always curious to find out if artist is something we, as kids, aspired to be as adults.
I think I've always been creative ever since I was little. My parents never were really into... It's not that they didn't nurture it, they just were kind of disinterested. When I was in high school, I really got into drama and like theater and stuff, and that was fun. And I didn't really get into visual arts until I was in college, and I kind of outgrew the theater department in a way. I felt like I'm such a control freak, and I was kind of like, I don't like working with all these other people. So I kind of started getting into visual arts. And from there, I kind of started doing the art thing and taking art classes, and I, graduated from college doing an art show at the end of the year, all of that, and didn't immediately go for my MFA. I initially thought, well, I need a vocation, and so I first actually went to library school to get my master's in library sciences. And after my first semester at library school, I was like, oh, I really don't like this very much. I miss the art world so much. So I kind of speed applied to a bunch of art schools. And that's kind of how I ended up at Tufts, aka School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And then after the MFA, I stuck around Boston for about 5 years, I think. And I felt like I had built a little community for myself. I had belonged to the Atlantic Works Gallery, which is this really beautiful little gallery in East Boston, right on the harbor. And, I was doing kind of like weekly crit stuff with other artists in the area. And so I felt like I had a little community there. But after 5 years of just creating constant output and not really getting anywhere, really, I kind of was like, I'm tired of this town. And so we moved to Chicago. I wanted to do a short film, which I did end up doing. But one thing that really ended up happening was that I started getting into circus art. There's a really good school in Chicago. And I started learning specifically tightwire. And that's what I feel like that's kind of my medium right now is tightwire. And I've just been kind of doing that for the past 5 years. And that's kind of what's been my creative life.
Yeah. So how much time was there between so you did your undergrad, what did you do kind of work-wise before going to get your library science degree?
Well, I jumped in right from undergrad. So when I was in undergrad, I was working for the library. I just had a student job at the library. So that's kind of one of the reasons I did want to go to get a library science degree. I'm like, okay, I like this work environment. Maybe that kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I never had any illusions that I was going to make money with my artwork. There's always this part of me that's like, yeah, you better have a vocation or something that you like enough to be able to support yourself.
Not having a day job was never a reality that you've pursued.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And I sometimes kind of regret that. Maybe I should have, and that might be something I'll consider in the future, is that maybe I should have thought bigger. Because I immediately was like, there's no way I got to get a real job.
So you worked in the library and you thought, this is something I might like to do. So when you were getting your library science degree, you discovered that maybe it wasn't quite what you were looking for, or did you finish that degree and get out?
I finished it. I was actually getting my MFA and my library degree at the same time.
So before we talk about your current day job a little bit more, can you talk a little bit more about the 5 years that you stayed in Boston? Like, what were you doing for money then?
I was doing what I do now. I mean, I've been doing this career for about 10 years. So I work in nonprofit development, and I'm on the back end. Specifically, I'm a prospect researcher. I'm basically an expert in the 1%. I do research on high net wealth individuals who may or may not give to the organization.
How do you like that work?
I mean, I'm gonna start talking about communism, and I apologize. But when I first got the job, I was a little bit more like, okay, this is a way for me to help people in some kind of like strange way. Like, I am working for these nonprofits, and they are quote unquote doing a good thing. And so me researching these high net wealth individuals is like towards a greater good. And I just think we need more socialist programming. So I also now I'm at this point where I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels. The work itself is boring, yeah, but for me, it's become more like an ideological problem that I haven't quite figured out how to solve.
So, like when I asked you that first question, current occupation, you immediately kind of wanted to qualify it. Which, so when people ask you, what do you do? Like, how do you answer that question?
Oh, I always just say I work in nonprofit development.
So you don't say you're a circus artist with a day job? Like, how does your
I think it
kind of current medium figure in?
Like, if I'm at a party, I might say I'm a circus artist with a day job. I'm like talking to somebody at a party. I think it really depends on who's asking the question. I think, and also it becomes difficult to say I'm a circus artist simply because there is this sort of capitalist notion that you cannot be what you are unless you paid a lot for it. So, and even though I'm against that idea, it's still like something that I feel really deeply. So I wouldn't go around saying I'm a circus artist until I feel like I'm at a semi-pro level.
Yeah, like if you're not making money from it, it's almost like it's like a hobby still.
Yeah, which again is an attitude I really hate. Like, I want to respect myself, and I want to respect other artists who are not making money from their work. And because I know there's so much time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears poured into it, and it is so serious. But the system at large still kind of like crushes you a little bit, and you're like, no, I'm not really.
I have to be honest here. I knew Laura had gotten into circus arts, but I wasn't aware going into this interview that this medium had completely taken over her creative practice. That said, not only were my questions still relevant, I think Laura's practice provides some incredible lessons for artists working in any creative medium. My next question was going to be to ask you to describe your studio space or setup.
Well, I'll say my studio space has, even when I was in grad school, have always just been in my home. I don't really like going out and creating a new studio space. I'm very private. So to that end, I've never really had a living room. This is a little different now because I'm doing this circus training. So I can't actually rig an entire full size tightwire in my living room, although that is the dream. I do practice at a studio, and so I go over there to do all my training. Living room is still my studio. I have a little practice wire in there, and I have all my art books in there, and I have my desk, and that is still my studio. And I still do a lot of, training, calisthenics in there. My living room has always been my studio.
So regardless of what medium, that's your setup.
That's why I feel safest to really create. I don't really create my acts at a loft.
A loft is a teaching, training, and performance space for the aerial and circus arts in Chicago.
I always go to my practice wire, and to me, it's like a sketchbook. So I'll get on it and be like, what does this movement feel like? Because I feel like I need so much privacy to feel safe in creating. I can't really let go and reach that point where I'm feel totally comfortable enough to try something weird or something that's I know maybe fail. I need to be in my own like little hobbit hole in my living room and figure that out.
So can you talk a little bit more about the transition for you from working in a more, I don't know, for lack of a better word, traditional medium to working kind of using your body and working in circus arts?
I had started to kind of get tired of making objects. They make very beautiful, cool installations. I love that aspect of it, but I don't like, how sustainable is this for me? Unless I can sell them, I'm just trapped by my own artwork. I was so kind of lucky because I was like, okay, I'm going to make a short film. So I kind of started with that. I've never been like super dominated by any one particular medium. So for me, I always am like, oh, this would make a good XYZ. And I didn't like, I feel like I don't really care that I don't know a lot about something. I mean, you can just do it. Like, and that was another big reason I wanted to move to Chicago. So I was going to make a telenovela based on this family story. And I was like, I need Spanish speakers. And I was like, oh, Chicago, my brother's living in Chicago, so I need him on this project anyway. And Chicago has like the third largest Latino population in the US, second to New York and LA. It was kind of like, yeah, let's just go do that. And, the energy we have from being in a new place, we'll just finish this film. I quit my job in Boston and pretty much had a new job within a few months in Chicago.
Like several of the artists I talked to over the course of this podcast, Laura works in the field of art and design higher education.
I work for an art school. To this job's credit, obviously because of where I was working, it was very helpful to the film because I could be very open about what I was up to. I actually would say this as a piece of advice to people, artists and offices. Being open with your colleagues at your job about your artistic proclivities is not a bad idea. For the most part, I've never hidden the fact that I have this whole other life outside of the office. It's at your own risk. If you really do feel like you're in an environment that is going to penalize you for that, obviously don't say shit. It does make things a lot easier if you can do that.
So can you talk a little bit more about kind of what is your typical weekday routine now? Like when do you go to work? When do you, how do you fit in your training?
Okay, here's like a dirty secret. It's not so dirty. I still haven't finished my film. It's been in post-production for 3 years. I finished shooting everything and it has literally about 98% finished, but I can't finish that 2%. Part of it is because I can just leave it alone and it's never going to go away. It just sits in my computer.
Laura explains how transitioning into movement arts has forced her to be more disciplined with her studio time than she maybe was in the past working in various visual art media.
The cool thing about getting into a form of movement you're really passionate about is that it forces you to be disciplined in a way that I think no other art form forces you to be. I've been fairly disciplined since I graduated from my MFA at always trying to be sure that I'm working on something, but I have never worked so hard as I've worked on this. I cannot leave my training behind at all because the skill set literally starts to disappear. And I have a regular 9 to 5 and I train about 4 days. I train at my studio about 4 days a week. So I just do my normal job and then I just go over to the studio after work and I put in my hour, sometimes 2 hours on the tightwire, doing my drills, doing all my training, learning new tricks, thinking about new acts, etc. The one day that I'm not like training on a tightwire, I'm usually doing something towards that tightwire training, whether it's conditioning, whether it's getting physical therapy, whether it's getting a massage or whatever. And then my weekends are pretty much totally free. I keep those free kind of on purpose to rest.
Do you ever miss that part of it of just making things? And I'm wondering do props fit in there? Like, does that sort of satisfy that?
Sort of. I don't really miss making things that much at all, actually. Maybe a little bit sometimes, but really, this feels very I can't explain how satisfying movement really does feel. Like I do make things. I make my fans. I make my shoes. I make my costumes. I would love to start including more props and weirder costumes and stuff on the wire. And I'm kind of at a crux right now because I'm like, well, I don't have enough time to start including other aspects of other because I am working full time. I am reaching this point where I'm like, wow, if I really want to start pushing this medium and my training to a more serious level, I have to do something about what I'm doing for money.
Yeah, like you're getting to a point where you feel like you need more time.
I need more time to do my artwork. The first 4 years of this tightwire training, there was no art produced at all. It was just about showing up and showing up and showing up and learning the craft so you can have a voice. And I've now reached a nice point where I'm not like an amazing wire walker or anything, but I can now start thinking more creatively about what I want to say, what I want it to look like. I can start thinking more creatively about the choreography because I'm capable of doing more. You know, creativity and art, that's so long. And, you know, that's something that the rest of the world doesn't quite appreciate, is how stupid long everything takes to make something. Like I've always said this in my head. I'm like, okay, I always have to do a multiple of 3 every time I think I'm going to make anything, whether it's tightwire shoes or like whatever, you know, or a movie or anything. It's like, yeah, this should take 3 months. And then in my head, I'm like, no, it's going to take 9 months. You have to,
That's so true.
So I am reaching this point where I want to explore other options to make money. Complicating that fact, the student loan situation was a driving factor for my current career because it kept me, I was hoping that they would get forgiven given that I've been working in the nonprofit industry for 10 years. But honestly, I think what's really going on with this is that it's being deliberately made a bureaucratic nightmare. So it's super infuriating. I should be very, very close to student loan forgiveness, but I'm apparently not. I guess that's a promise I can't really count on, and I kind of have to move on from that and make new plans in my life because I would also like to make more artwork. I do want to make more art. So I'm kind of at a crossroads right now. I'm trying to figure out like what is going to be my next step. And I would prefer if my next step were more in favor of my artwork than it has been in the past.
In heavy circulation around the time Laura and I chatted was Jerry Salt's 33 Rules for Being an Artist. Lesson 21, Define Success. The best definition of success, he writes, is time, the time to do your work. Artists are, he goes on, sneaky and resourceful. Eventually, he writes, you scam a way to work an only 3 days a week job.
I need to scam my way into a job that I only have to be there a couple times a week.
Yeah, I think it's easier said than done for sure. Especially, I mean, there are part-time jobs out there, but they pay really, really poorly. Until that happens, weekends can be an interesting time for an artist with a full-time day job. So for you, you mentioned that weekends are for, you know, you kind of force yourself to rest. How do your weekends differ from your weekdays?
I try to pack everything into my weekday because my weekends, I feel like, are sacred. I don't want to do shit. I try to do everything possible. Like, I don't go grocery shopping on the weekend. I don't do errands. I really try to just have it be like a nice 2-day block for me to spend quality time with my husband, catch up on sleep, rest my body for my training. Yes, sometimes obviously life happens and you have to do some stuff over the weekend. But generally, I am working really hard to try to keep my weekends really free because I'm a big believer that empty time is super, super important, very important to the creative process. I need to get to a point where I'm bored enough to be like, oh, wait, I have an idea.
Talk a little bit about your creative community right now. You had mentioned when you were in Boston, staying in Boston after grad school, that you had that kind of nice little community and you were part of a gallery. And then since you've moved to Chicago and since you've changed mediums, I'd say fairly dramatically, what is that? Yeah. What does that look like for you? And how does that, does that factor into your creative process right now?
My community now is like the circus community. It's pretty much people at my studio. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've kind of switched I haven't been really to a gallery in a long time. I don't really pay that much attention to the regular visual arts world so much. I do because my job requires me to be aware of it, obviously because I work for an art school. I don't like in terms of what I go. So now I'm like going to theater. I like going to live shows a lot. Like, so for me to support my friends isn't to go to a gallery show. It's to go to see a play of theirs, or helping them produce a circus show, watching them train, or helping them figure out an act. So I think it's definitely now my community is a lot more, not just circus, but just the general, I would say general theaters, performing arts and dance.
So in a way, you've kind of gone full circle back to your undergrad days.
A little bit.
Like, how do you just handle the time constraint of that? Like, is that important for you to fit in? Do you feel like that's taking away from your training at all? Or is that kind of part of your process?
Well, again, because it's so ephemeral, it makes you very disciplined about going to see people's shows if they've asked you to support them. It's something I really like about it. It's kind of use it or lose it, man. A circus in the U.S. is very different from circus in Europe. Circus in Europe has now become more of like a contemporary art, and it's very intellectual, and it's very avant-garde, and that's something that attracts me a lot more. But circus in the U.S. is still very much rooted in these big top ideas. Or again, I'm looking for a certain intellectual, conceptual backbone to people's work. And so circus can absolutely be a place for that. It's just not as popular in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you do kind of some intellectual cross training when that happens? Like, are there other things that you kind of fall back on, like museum shows or films or whatever?
Yeah, I'm always looking. Yeah, films, a good one, or really a lot of dance.
It's unlike the kind of typical visual art world in that you really can't flake out. Either you're really there for the performance or you're not. It's not like, oh yeah, I didn't make it to the opening, but I'll, I see a lot of that in kind of the
absolutely.
The show scene, the gallery scene of people not showing up and oh, those shows open for 2 weeks. I'll go tomorrow. There's a lot of, you can flake out, but it sounds like with this, you really can't do that. So getting back to the idea of community and, I think that what you're doing now is unique from probably a lot of the other people that I'll talk to in this project. But how does social media figure into this? Do you feel the same, not pressure, but sort of drive to share things online? Do you kind of is there a community aspect online, and how do you sort of navigate that?
It was obviously a big circus community online, and because I do tightwire is very niche even in circus. It's a very old form of art, but not a lot of people do it. So I've found that the tightwire community online, it's just so easy to connect to the best wire walkers in the world, actually. That's kind of cool because it is so niche. It gives me this very strange headspace where I don't understand why I'm not as good as everybody else. Because everyone's so nice to me and they treat me like I'm a peer. And I'm how come I can't do a cartwheel on the wire though? Everyone, how am I in this? They act like I belong in this group, but I don't have the skill set they have. I'm a 38-year-old woman. I'm not really a threat to anyone's career because I just want to create work that I think is kind of weird and quirky and interesting. I'm not interested in being a circus professional. So I think me not being really a threat to them also kind of helped.
It kind of feels like you've always had that attitude toward your creative practice. It's not something that you've really ever thought to try to turn it into a job or turn it into a way to make money. And maybe that I'm getting the sense that that's even more so the case right now with what you're currently doing.
I mean, for a long time, I liked that a lot because I felt I was a bit of a purist, it has been tainted by this money-making nonsense. And so, I try to view my job as my patron. Not gonna lie, having a coach is really expensive. And that is, and that's kind of funded by having a job.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're a perfect example of this idea that the work you do for pay supports the work you do for love. But the caveat for me is always you do need a certain amount of time to make that work? If you could quit your job, like, what would your day look like? Would you want to spend all day training and I don't know. I think you could probably carve out a pretty awesome day.
I think so.
Training.
Well, you know what I have to say, and I've said this to people before, it's not so much that I want more time on the tightwire. I don't think I would necessarily be training more hours on the tightwire itself. I think like any dancer, any professional dancer or athlete, it's everything else that supports it. And that's like where I would love to be able to make up for. Like I would be able to do more conditioning. I'd be able to see a physical therapist more frequently. I'd be able to cook more nutritious meals for myself. I'd be able to get enough sleep. I'd be able to work on other skills that I can't, like on my like flexibility skills. Or all of that stuff adds up to the practice. It isn't necessarily just about wire walking. It's about everything else that supports it. So what that would just do is enable me to really focus more on everything else that supports the art form. You know, like if I didn't have to worry about shelter and food and health insurance and all of that, we'd be really freed up to be able to pursue what we want. And I think a lot of this glorification of the hustle is that we don't actually know what art would look like not in a capitalist society. And so I think some of that too is like we have this idea that like, oh, unless you struggle, your work isn't going to be good. I have to hustle because that's what makes the art good. That's what gives it meaning. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'd just be very curious to see what would happen if it were the other way. Like, I feel like in terms of my productivity levels and my commitment to being a creative person, there have been so many times when I could have stopped. But, you know, somehow I just keep pushing forward. And I'm proud of that commitment that I've made. But at the same time, the happiest time in those 10 years, like really, like, was when I was laid off from a job and I didn't have a job for 9 months. But they gave me a generous enough severance package that I was completely fine. I made so much artwork during that time. I had like 3 shows. It was kind of like I was like on my own little residency. I just remember just like every day I would wake up and make an oatmeal for myself and then do artwork, but also have enough time to like go for walks and read books. And it was just so fucking pleasant. I have a grotesque ability to compartmentalize so much. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I need such a long weekend. I have to just put on my business casual outfit and do it. And then I change into a pair of leggings later.
I'm always curious to find out if what the artist I'm talking to is doing now in terms of the work, art, life, juggling act is sustainable. You know, where do you see that kind of like creativity, work balance, I don't know, in whatever arbitrary number of years?
Yeah, I do think that you're right. The day job would never be enough for me. Sometimes I don't like the idea that there's this innate drive. I would be very disappointed with myself. I'm very Catholic about this. So more than that, I think I'd feel really guilty if I wasn't making something. And I hate using like capitalist language to describe what I consider like sacred personal feelings. But especially after I've invested so much money and time in my art practice over the past 10 years, not just like with the student loans, but also like helping people put on shows and producing. And it's just 10 years of your life that, like, let's say I did decide to quit. I'm just like, why? Like, what about that giant 10-year investment? Like, where did that go? It's weird when you talk to people at your day job that don't have this kind of outside life. That's why when I look at, like, a professional artist who's making money doing their art, I do look at them in awe. I'm like, wow, you have literally won a lottery, because that's very, very difficult to achieve. Not everybody gets to do that. Like, how do you win the lottery? Yeah. How do you win the lottery where your dream job is to be a secretary at an art school? I don't know. How do you win the lottery that you can be a professional painter or a professional photographer where you just, you shoot your own weird shit.
And people buy it.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with the global economy. I'm dead serious when I say that.
See what happens in 2 years.
Yeah, I don't want to just run away screaming, because I think that's very dangerous in this current economy. So I want to make sure if I do run away screaming, I want to make sure I have this safety net and this safety net lined up, and how long are we really talking about? What am I going to really what do I want to accomplish in my time off? In my dream scenario, I would like to be able to quit and then maybe take 6 months, really focus on my artwork, be able to train the way I'd like to train. I feel like I'm at a point in my training where I feel like I'd make a lot of advancements creatively and physically if I could just focus for 2 freaking seconds. And when you overbalance everything so much, very little gets done, or it just gets done incredibly slowly. I also feel like, if I really, want to start embarking on some of the art projects that I would like to do with the skill set I've been developing, I kind of don't have a ton of time to do that.
Right. You can't wait until you retire and then go paint in your studio. I
kind of have to do it now. I have to kind of jump on this while I can. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to. So stay tuned.
Yeah,
stay
cool.
Tuned.
Since recording this interview in December 2018, Laura has quit her day job to spend a few months focusing more time on her creative practice. Look for a bonus episode later this summer. More information about Laura can be found at artistsandoffices.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I speak with San Francisco-based artist Lisa Jonas Taylor, who works by day in art and design higher education. Artists and Offices is produced and edited by me, Rebecca Bird Grigsby. Intro music is provided by Mr. Neat Beats. Show notes and additional episodes can be found at artistsandoffices.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast on iTunes and leave the show a rating or review. This will help the podcast connect with even more artists and offices. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm kind of like a kid sister kind of situation, even though I'm older than everyone. I'm so old.
That's so funny. You're like Chelsea to Barbie.
Yes.
You just want to hang out with them.
I do.